Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new video where you may have noticed out there that iRacing may have released something this season of Season 2 2024, and apparently it's a new weather system. Who knew? But anyway, what I think is worth noting is how much frames are we actually going to lose. So in this video I'm going to try and answer that, give you a figure at the end of a percentage of an average of what frames you should expect to lose between a dry circuit and a wet circuit. Now, right, the test conditions are, I have roped in Matthew. Thank you very much for helping me, Matthew. Do appreciate it. I'll pay you in cuddles one day. And in a nutshell, he's a mod on Discord, YouTube, and Twitch. So be nice to him. He has unlimited power. So be nice. Anyway, we borrowed him and we've also run the test on his PC. He has a slightly different PC to me as well. Still, both PCs are quite powerful. I have to say that off the cuff, but I want to get a percentage number of the difference between dry and wet. So what we did is we opened two test sessions. One was heavy, not very heavy, just heavy rain, and the other one was bone dry with clear skies. So I will go through that in a moment when we go through all the sciencey stuff. But in a nutshell, we went out on circuit. I followed him and then he followed me to see what would happen to our frames, both in front and behind, and also between dry and, you know, wet circuits, and sees what happens. And at the end of the video, I want to give you a percentage figure of what I think the frame loss will be over two PCs. I know it's a very small test, but at least it gives you a random number. So at least you think, right, sugar, I'm only getting 60%, and if I lose X percentage, I'm going to be in trouble. At least you're going to have that information to hand to at least make some graphical adjustments, or unfortunately get the old wallet out and make some upgrades to your PC. So that is the aim of this video, so let's crack on with it. I almost forgot. Got to put on my intelligent glasses. There we go. I instantly look about 20 IQ more smart now, so let's crack on. Right then, on screen is our session. So you can see here, we're using the Acura and we're using Daytona. So this is going to be the mix one. That is going to be the exact same date and time set on both. And this is the weather I'm using for the rain. You can see overcast there and heavy. So not very heavy, just heavy, because I want to try and be able to survive this and do at least 3 laps. This is the dry session. So you can see here we are clear skies and similar temperature, but we're bone dry in the sunshine. So I know it's not exactly, but I'm looking for the conditions rather than the track conditions for lap time. Moderate usage on both, 44% is what I always use for these tests. Now, these are the two PCs and the iRacing settings. You can see I've got 1080p triples and he's got 2K triples. So remember that when you're looking at the graphs. 7800 X3D, 48 Super, 32 gigs of RAM. He's got an Intel i9 and a 4080 standard, and 64 gigs of RAM, running slightly slower, but Windows 11 again. And this is what we're looking for. You can see the car in front is making an enormous amount of spray. And is this going to affect or hinder or do, what is it going to do to our, you can see it's blinding, it's absolutely blinding. They have done well, but what's it going to do to our frame? So this is the first set of graphs. Pause it if you'd like and have a glance over. The interesting thing there on the top graph is the blue lines. That is our frames per second. You can see they peak and trough kind of at the same points. I mean, that's a Daytona thing, to be honest. You bring in the main grandstand, your frames drops. You get rid of it on the oval and your frames go up. But the one I'm interested in is the average and the 5th percentile. So my 5th percentile is exactly the same as both, so that's nice. The lowest 5% of my frames were 109, which is good, and there is a 1% difference in the average frame, so 135 versus 134. So I'm quite happy with that. I have run it up 1% because it's literally one frame different, but I'm really happy with that I'm not seeing much performance for me being a car in front or behind. Now this is Matthew's performance, and in a nutshell he's got a similar story to me. Doesn't really matter in the wet if you're in front or behind, so it's kind of even Stevens. I'm guessing this is because the virtual mirror still has to render the car as well, so that takes some graphical and some processing power away from that, and you are generating your own spray as well. So I think it's all even Stevens, which I thought was surprising because I thought the car in front would give us a noticeable dip in frame. So that's one to notice, that it doesn't really matter if you're in front or behind. Obviously if you're in front, it's a nice clear view. Behind is very, very awkward to see anything. Right then, so the dry information here is the graphs again. Again, similar picks for me. This is exactly the same in front and behind, just in the dry session. So you can see there, weirdly, the average frames for me actually is a bigger difference than what we saw in the wet. Obviously, there is a difference in frames as well, so we'll come on to that in a little bit more. And also the 5th percentile, there is a noticeable difference, a lot more than what we saw in the wet, which again is interesting. So let's crack on to Matthews and see if he does the same. Right, then you can see here, again, the blue graph at the top, you can see similar spikes of Daytona magic, as it were. But you can see here, he's actually got higher frames with him being behind than what he did in front. So I thought that was weird. I did notice with the graphical settings that we have got slightly different settings, which again is okay because it's not too bad, but I am wondering if the virtual mirror is hurting him a little bit here. My FOV on the virtual mirror is slightly lower, so I'm wondering if that is helping. I think his was 120 and mine was 90. So it'll be interesting to see if that do that on another test on a different day. But yeah, similar, but in the wrong way. So I'm not too worried about that one, but this is going to be the big one. Right, I've gone back for the rain because, let's be honest, two cars going side by side around Daytona in the rain does look absolutely fantastic, so that's why I've done that. I've still got my spectacles on, so let's bring up the old spreadsheet. Now I'm going to bring up the top half first because this just reiterates what we mentioned in the first instant. So the average frames, max, and the 5th percentile is all there. You can see there I've lost a little bit of performance in the wet with Matthew being in front of me rather than me being in front of him, and he's done exactly the same of a -1% on the average frames. Not too worried about the max or the 5th percentiles because they're, you know, within negligible difference. So we're losing the same amount of frames, but it's barely anything, which is nice to see. Now the interesting one is if we drop it down and graph a little bit more, you can see the dry difference. Weirdly, we have different figures for the dry. I'm guessing that's to do with the virtual mirror, but again, not really sure on that one. But it's within 5%, which I think is margin of error, things like that. As I say, this isn't truly scientific. I think it's just a good guide to see what can happen. Let's drop the graph down a little bit more, and you can see that the difference between wet and dry now, then this is going to be the big one. So this is the two numbers up top. Worked out in a percentage between the front and the wet. So both figures, so that 135 and 178 frames per second, what is the percentage difference? And I've got a -24 performance drop with that with me being in front between the dry and the wet. And then when I go to behind, it's a 28% difference. And I think that's quite substantial, really. If we average that out, you know, you're looking at a sort of a 26% drop, which is basically, you know, rounding here, Top Gear maths, as they used to say, it's a quarter of my frames have gone because of the rain. Now that necessarily isn't a bad thing. We all knew there was going to be a performance drop, and to drop 25% of my frames, I think is still a winner. Now, with that said, that's only not a problem because we're still in the hundreds. If you've got a PC and you go around Daytona and you're getting 60 frames a second, be slightly concerned, because if you lose 25% of your frames, you're now rocking like 45 frames, which might not be that drivable. So you need to bear that in mind. And this is why I wanted to do this, because I wanted to get a number that people can abide by. Be like, right, what do I need to do? Right, I need to get up to 100 frames, because if I lose 25 or 30% of my frames, then at least then I'm still a playable value. You can see here on Matthew's percentages, he's a little bit more than me, 37% and 36% between the front and being behind in the wet versus dry. And again, I'm surprised that that's that high. I don't know why I'm a little bit less performance hit with my PC, considering we do have quite similar PCs. His CPU is a little bit clocked higher than mine because it's an Intel one, so I don't know where that performance difference is coming from. I'm happy that mine's better, obviously, for selfish reasons, but it's another thing to watch because that's getting on to sort of high 30s, you know, and if you use Top Gear maths again, that's 40% of your frames disappearing. So again, if you're getting 100 frames per second, 40% of them go, you're down to 60, which again is still perfectly playable, but it's a little bit scary. So I'm hoping there's going to be more optimization. Again, Daytona is a bad circuit for frames, so we've got to take that into account. When that massive great grandstand comes on screen, your frames do plummet, as we've seen on the graph with the peak and troughs. You know, the peaks, when it goes really high, you're on the oval, and when it goes really low, you've got that massive grandstand. Things you can do to protect your frames is, I don't know if you've noticed on my settings in particular, my clouds are actually on quite low. My cloud and sky details are on low. Crowds are on low as well, because I'm not looking in the grandstand while I'm driving. You know, it's one of the things you should be looking out the front window in your mirror. You shouldn't be waving at the grandstand as you're going past. And also the big one is you can actually turn off grandstands. You can have a lower setting on grandstands, and I do recommend that in the big enduro race as well, to get that extra frames per second, just in case rain does appear, which is now quite a high possibility to happen. So yeah, in a nutshell, the total average loss between the two PCs is 31%. So that is the magical number of the video. We have lost 31% of our frames. And 31% is only higher because Matt's sort of 36 and 37%. And I'm not too worried about that because, as mentioned previous, he is running 2K monitors. So he is running triples 2Ks and I'm running triple 1080p still. in a nutshell, I'm still quite happy with that. If you're getting sort of under the 100 frames a second within a normal race, I would probably consider turning down the graphics, if not upgrading your graphics card and CPU. Yes, that I prefer the first option rather than the second option, because the second option is expensive. But in a nutshell, I don't think this performance here is entirely game breaking. I think that's good optimization, considering iRacing is a really old engine, and we can have difficult frames in a normal dry race anyway. To lose, for example, me 26% of my frames, I'm not complaining about that. I've got enough headroom. I normally have it locked at 120 anyway, and in these tests all my averages were above 120 anyway, so fingers crossed I shouldn't see a drop in the slightest, and if I do, then I can do graphical settings to change that, and I've got the information to know that. So fingers crossed this was a helpful video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and that lovely YouTube stuff. That'll be awesome. This did take a few bits of brain power to try and put this video together, so please let everyone know about this video. That'll be awesome. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I've been TDI. Have a good one. Catch you on the track.